Every word landed so beautifully.
It is my pleasure to once again welcome you all to the 2023 Avtar and Ceramon Best Companies for Women and the Most Inclusive Companies in India. So we started this in 2016, so what you're witnessing is the 8th annual edition of that particular launch that we did in 2016. So again, as I said, we are happy to have you all here. You're here because I think you all share the kind of passion that we have and your commitment to ensure there is creating ecosystem, workplace in the society which is equal for all, which strives for equity to ensure there are the differences that we are able to bridge and therefore create this beautiful workplaces, the best companies for women and the most inclusive companies in India. Avtar, as I said, started in 2023 years back. It was started by Dr. Soundarya Rajesh, the visionary behind whatever that we do. And it actually started with several firsts that we did in India. It started with looking at how do we ensure we bring back women into the workplace. Because as you all know, India is one of the lowest number of women workforce participation. And one of the big reasons, the entry itself was difficult, but after you enter, a lot of women actually took break and they could never come back. So that was the starting point for us to really focus on how do we ensure that we have larger women working in the organization, and we felt this could be the starting point to help women actually come back. So that's one of the first things that we did way back 23 years. So I think we had a lot of tough times, but today you will see some of the results of the work that is happening in terms of number of companies are eager to really and doing their bit to sort of ensure that we're able to have more women enter the workplace. We also started India's largest diversity portal today, first diversity portal. It's called myavtar.com. It's a portal for all, not for gender, but also ensuring that we're able to provide opportunities for persons with disability, people from the LGBT community, from different generations. So that's another first thing that we have done. We also ensure that it's just not helping people come back or ensure giving opportunities to them, but we also need to ensure that you have the right ecosystem, the career enablers, that will really help women not just to come back, but to stay and grow. So we've worked a number of work in terms of helping companies in terms of policies, programs, best practices. That's the kind of impact that we had through various programs, right, with working with the organizations. Another thing that we felt that could make a big sort of impact is how we ensure that we're able to skill women especially. So the reskilling and upskilling, because today's context, we all know that what are the skills that you have has a very shorter duration in terms of relevance, right? With all the AI and the new technologies coming in, you really need to constantly update yourself, and women are on the sort of the disadvantaged, typically because they are in the lower segment of the skill level, if you see, right? It's because of the education, the disparity education, the access to education. Therefore, skilling becomes very important. Today, we are partnering with a lot of companies and see how can we skill women. So that's another very important thing that we're really working on.
To be here at the Avtar and Ceramon Best Companies for Women in India 2023 list. We are talking about 4 lists actually. The first is the top 10 best companies for women in India. The second is the 100 best companies for women in India. The third are the champions of inclusion, and the fourth are the exemplars of inclusion. So these are the 4 lists that are going to be shared across India today. And while we are speaking, we are also on LinkedIn Live. So we have over 25,000 people who are also watching this like a live commentary on the status of companies that aspire to be the big brands, the big employer brands when it comes to doing some genuine good work as far as women's workforce participation is concerned. Sharing of your experiences, but also provide some insights for companies that wish to become a top 10 best company for women in India. So at the outset, let me first congratulate your 3 organizations. Big round of applause, for having been part of the Avtar and Seramount best companies, top 10, for women in India. I'm going to start off on a slightly sober note. I was just mentioning that, a little virus did a lot of our work for us. And the fact that because of COVID, flexibility, the entire thing around how can we manage work and life became a little easier because companies were sort of, they were forced, their hand was forced, to do something about this. But has COVID really made a difference? Is it something that, companies also saw that their own work-life agenda, their own gender diversity agenda got kind of accelerated by the advent of the forced work from home that happened as a result of COVID? We are now in 2023, a couple of years after this effect. So there is now time for us to reflect and actually arrive at an answer. I'm going to go across to you, Aditya. What do you think? Do you think that the work-life changes that were brought about as a result of the forced work from home, are they sustainable? A, 2, are they really beneficial to women professionals? And 3, what are your thoughts about it? Over to you.
So first of all, Dr. Sandhya, thanks for having me. I'm sure my co-panelists would say the same thing. It's an honor to be here in this August company. Thank you very much. So, I would just take a step back a little bit and talk about history of work. So if you see the history of work, wherever something big has happened in the history of work, for example, industrial revolution, right? Many peasants, small business owners became factory workers, and their conditions of work had to be regulated subsequently because they were getting exploited by the unions. So unions came in. Then the advent of computers, right? That was another point of inflection. And again, that didn't lead to great work-life balance. So COVID, interestingly, this is the first time in the history of work, in my view, where COVID has pushed the boundaries on flexibility. To give you my own example, before 7th March 2020, I had never, in my 30 years of career, worked from home for one full day.
Wow.
Never. And after that, for 1.5 years, as we all know, right, I was only working from home. And that gave me an appreciation of how work can be done from anywhere. Right? So there are many managers like me, who started understanding that actually physical presence is important. There's a lot of benefit of physical presence, but it's not the be and end. So to your point, I think this is sustainable. This is, like I said, this is the first time the employee has won, in a way.
Oh, wow.
The employee has won flexibility. And we are seeing, for real estate reasons, for example, when we came back into the workplace, we realized that a lot of the real estate space was taken up. Because we're growing in India, we're adding about 3,000 jobs a year, but we're not adding 3,000 seats every year. So COVID gave an excuse for organizations to say, hey, listen, work can be done flexibly. We don't need to have large real estate footprints, right? And I think that will sustain, that by itself will sustain.
Absolutely, absolutely, great, fantastic. I love the way you said the employee has won. And I think, while there have been multiple reasons supported by data such as what we share, the fact that it was shown to be possible, I think it moved from the realm of a dream into the realm of the possible. And I think that kind of, made a big difference. Thank you so much for that. Thiru, over to you. Thiru, whenever I interact with IBM, or whenever, Prachi or anyone else from your team and we, have a chat, I'm very overwhelmed and overawed by the fact that IBM's diversity practices are over a century old. Your first African American saleswoman took up the job in almost about 106 years ago. And that shows us the kind of commitment and consistent pursuit of the goal of gender equality, gender equity, diversity that a company like IBM has followed, and for all of these years, year after year. Very often it also makes me feel, if there is a company that's just starting off, or probably 10 years into their organization's journey, for them to become an IBM 100 years from now, pursuing their diversity, what would your advice be? What do you think has worked for you to be a consistent top 10 best company for women in India? What has worked in the case of IBM? And what would your advice be to a company that's just starting off the diversity journey?
Well, thank you, Dr. Sandhya. It's a privilege to be working for a company like IBM, and very rich history, legacy. And I think it starts off with the purpose as to why you exist first, as a company. And right now, we try to make the world work better. And when we look at the world around us, diversity, gender equality, and everything is the reality. So it is essential. Now for us, we've been a flexible company pre-COVID for many decades, and unlike my friend Aditya, I have worked from home. In fact, 20 years ago, if somebody came for an interview, they would say, "Can I work from home?" So those concepts we were quite well known for allowing people to be flexible, even in the early days. So COVID, just to come back to COVID and I'll talk about, challenged us. I can't say that it didn't change the way we work. Because then what it did to us was, how can we make our practices and policies hyper-personalized? While we believe we were flexible, we have global policies, broad, practices, it wasn't sufficient. We had to look at the individual's nuance in life. What works for her didn't work for another. And it could range from different realities and phases of what they do. So we needed to change our tolerance levels in terms of how we can accommodate. So it was very personalized practices. And what we also then did is, after listening, we are a company that listens. So I think one of the things I would tell the other upcoming companies is, you can never make a change only top down. It is good to start bottoms up, because then you are responding to a need versus what you perceive is good. So we started to ask as to how are things and what can we do to make a difference. Some people came back and said, well, I don't need to come to a metro city. I'd like to stay closer home because I have parents, elder care. So we started to expand into, let's say, tier 2 cities. Big investments, and quite a lot of people were able to sort of continue their employment versus break employment. Some people said, I want to come to the office. And I don't mind coming to the office, but when I come to the office, I need childcare. In the good old days, childcare was always close by, within the 1 kilometer of where you live, or within 3 kilometers of where the office building was. I said, I don't want to bring my child along post-COVID in a crowded bus or a train. I want to allow to have a center close to where I actually live, where's my home. So then we started to change our policies to now, with aggregators as an example, we now have over 1,000 childcare centers that people can put their children to, versus 10 or 12 which was in and around their particular office cities. So those small things can actually help. So one is say, listen to your workforce. Second is, it has to be in the DNA of your company, with complete sponsorship and commitment all the way through the leadership of the organization. We've learned from other countries I wouldn't say, India is among the top in terms of our diversity. We have miles to go, as you rightly noted. But I have to say, we've made tremendous progress over the many years. We have to be, I'm going to say, I won't say shameless, but very smart to copy. What works in other places, if you didn't think about, implement it. You don't need to start from scratch, and it's tried and tested. So you should be very well aware, and which is where some of these industry benchmarks and sharing and platforms like this help. Because every platform I go to, I pick up one or two things, and I stay in touch with my colleagues and friends saying, how is this working for you? It's a great idea. So we implement small incremental changes. So for companies who are introducing this into mainstream, you should not worry if you can't make a big bang change. But every year, it is one additional incremental change. One other point I would say is be very transparent about it, because it's a huge cultural impact that how you operate as a company. And a lot of these problems can be easily solved by employee groups themselves.
Absolutely.
You don't need human resources, you don't need leaders or managers.
The challenge still exists, even though we could be in an industry which it's easier to hire women compared to manufacturing. But even say for us, we do consulting work, analytics work. We need a lot of STEM, women from STEM colleges. And if you look at the talent pipeline, there itself is weak. So every percentage point that we improve comes with a whole lot of hard work. So I would say the challenges by industry differ, but the challenge still exists, specifically in India, because we don't have that kind of a talent pipeline coming in. Right? And there, you have to be very intentional about it. Now, traditionally, if we were to, let's say, we were only going to engineering colleges to hire, how can we encourage more women to apply? So, for example, ZS would do something like a ACE-a-thon, wherein we would encourage more women to apply to us, we would talk about what it means for them. And also just opening up your mind to say, can this be done by a very different set of qualification? So we actually opened up the entire analytics program